My daughter turns 11 in 6 weeks. She has been begging for a Nintendo Switch. Due to poor grades and overall bad attitude, we decided not to get a Switch. Money isn't the issue, it's her behavior. She acts very entitled and she's lying left and right. I just don't feel now is the right time for a Switch. The theft, on Easter, we, my husband, our kids, and myself, are at my husband's aunt and uncle's house. Aunt and uncle have 2 adult children, one of whom is mentally delayed, we'll call her cousin. She functions about a 10 years old level but is in her 40s. She lives in an assisted living apartment and has a job where she gets paid $5 a week. So she doesn't get many upscale things unless they are a gift. Well, cousin had an old Game Boy that she saved up to buy and was playing while we were there. She eventually set it down and moved on to playing a board game with us while the kids ran around playing. My kid decided to be an epic turd and took the Game Boy. She snuck it out of aunt and uncle's by asking if she could go to our car to look for a book she had brought, and stashed it in the glove box. She proceeded to hide the fact that she had the Game Boy for several days, even after being asked where she last saw it. Her opening to come clean when aunt and uncle called and asked if we had seen where cousin might have left it. Due to cousin's challenges, she was utterly distraught over her missing Game Boy. It's one of the few forms of entertainment she has, and she worked hard to have it. I'm disappointed about the thievery, but I'm even more upset over my kid's attitude about being caught. I only found out about it because her sisters ratted her out. Even then she absolutely refused to tell me the truth and tried to pin it on her sisters. It wasn't until I sat there and thought about it that I knew she was lying to me. Once I told her I knew it had to be her because of XYZ did she finally confess. Her behavior only got worse from there. She refused to apologize when uncle and cousin came by to get the Game Boy, and had the balls to act like SHE was the one being wronged. I feel like I need to drop the hammer on her and send the message home that stealing is not okay. I think that purchasing the Switch, with my daughter's help from money she would earn by doing extra chores, and having her give it to cousin might be a good way to deliver that message while simultaneously giving cousin a nice upgrade to make amends. I mentioned this to a friend and they said this would be a move because birthday. I don't really think that matters, but the comment was enough to make me question myself. I do intend on giving my kiddo the opportunity to earn a Switch down the line, just not in such close proximity to this incident. Not sure how or when, since I have a SO to consult, but the opportunity will be provided in some way. Our therapist is of the opinion that my daughter largely has these issues because of the inconsistent co-parenting relationship her bio dad has with my husband and I. My husband and I are big on structure, boundaries, natural consequences, and following through. Her bio dad is the exact opposite of us. He and his family hardly ever tell her no to the things she wants, and give her a ridiculous amount of treats, toys, candy, etc., and this is causing her to be confused, to struggle with our expectations, and express herself negatively. I assure you, we have been addressing these behaviors for quite some time. I am a 39-year-old male, and I lost my son in 2019 due to a chronic heart condition. He was 15 years old. It was devastating and I just couldn't take it, especially when my family did little to nothing to support me during these difficult times. They didn't bring my son meals when he was at the hospital. They didn't let me go home and rest even for a few hours. They didn't take care of other things while I had a lot to deal with. I wasn't offered any help, just words. They'd just talk but do nothing. Despite the struggle, I've created an account for my son's college fund and kept putting whatever I could get at the time, and my son would talk about that a lot. He was depressed but always believed that he was going to get better and continue his education and attend college. I started saving money to keep him motivated and to make him feel like he could be like any other kid with hopes for a good future. He had a very close friend that's about the same age as him. They were friends for 5 years, and I can't express how his presence in my son's life helped him through the worst days. Sometimes his friend would spend the night with us and try to get my son to do activities and lighten up his mood all the time. To be frank, his friend was closer to him than his own family. He never stopped visiting and asking how I'm doing after my son's death. He'd show me handmade projects he made for my son and as a way to remember him, and we'd sometimes just sit and talk together or cry together. Last week, while I was with my family, my sister asked me what I was going to do with my son's college money. I didn't want to mention this, but since she asked, I told her that I will be giving the money to my son's friend. She barely even recognized his friend and was confused and said that my nephew deserves this money since he's family. My mom agreed that I wasn't thinking straight and that I should help the people close to me, family, and that my nephew has a right to go to college, and I was wrong for giving this opportunity away to someone else. I didn't know what to say. They kept pointing out that I was making a mistake and how my nephew will resent me if he finds out. Thing is, my nephew wasn't close to my son. I don't even know why he'd be bothered. My sister went on about not being able to afford my nephew's college. I told her this was my decision, and I felt more comfortable that way. She started lashing out, constantly texting me, constantly wanting to talk to me, and ending up arguing. When I snapped, she had my mom calling me, basically guilt-tripping me and telling me I'm wrong and that I needed to think about this. It's just too much pressure and I'm feeling lost and unable to figure out how to deal with this. My husband and I have been married for 21 years. We have 2 adult children. One is in college out of state and the other is in the Navy. When we first got married, my husband was in Navy, and we spent the first 10 years of our marriage moving from place to place, wherever his new duty station was. I found it hard to make friends, and I could not keep a job, so I made a difficult decision and decided to be a som. When he got out of the Navy 11 years ago, he took a job and we moved. 3 years in, he got offered a job in another part of the company. However, it was in another state, so we moved again. We stayed there for 6 years. I went back to college and got my degree and began looking for work. I found a job I liked in my field, and 6 months into working, he said he was offered a job with a new company and wanted to take it. But that would mean we would be moving almost 2,000 miles from where we were in a new state. I reluctantly agreed because the new state would have more job opportunities for me and we would be closer to our family, which is something that we have not had in many years. Last night my husband came up to me and said that there was a job opening in his company and he wanted to apply for it. It would mean a pay raise and better hours, but the caveat would be that we have to move again. We have been living in our new state for 3 years. I love it here. I have an amazing job and I am making great money. I finally have friends and am able to socialize. I told him that I am not moving again. Anytime we have to move, he always leaves first and I end up being responsible for selling / packing the house. And I am not doing that again. Our son's college is only 2 hours from here. We can see him twice a month. If we move, that means we would have at least a day's drive and would only be able to do that once or twice a year. Now my husband is upset with me and guilt-tripping me because he claims I do not support him. I told him that was BS because I spent most of my life moving from place to place to support his career. He told me that I am selfish and he is just trying to provide for us. I told him that we are more than comfortable where we are now, and that if he truly wants to take the job, he will be going alone. My husband and I have been together since I was 15 and he was 17. He joined the Navy right after graduation from high school when he was 18 and I was 16, but had to wait 2 years before we could marry. He works for a company that has plants in 15 states. He is currently in middle management, but if he wants to advance his career further, he would need to go to another plant out of state. Financially, we are more than comfortable. We do not need any more money. My son plans to stay in the place he is after college. We have a great relationship with him and he comes home 1 time a month and we see him 1 time a month. My other son comes home on leave whenever he can and stays with us. We are very close to both of the boys. I talked to my husband again tonight and told him quite firmly that moving again was not an option for me. The area he wants to move has very little jobs in my field and specialty in that area, and I would need to commute more than an hour one way for a job versus the 20 minutes I have here. We are sandwiched between 2 major cities, and if we move we would be an hour from the most major city. I would also have to take a massive pay cut and work a menial job to build a new network to find employment in my field. My husband is disappointed in me for not wanting to leave. He left to stay with a friend because he needs to think. He doesn't understand why I would force him to turn down an opportunity to advance his career further. I told him to take all the time he needs, but I am not moving again. I said I would revisit the possibility when I am ready for retirement in 15 years, but no sooner. I have 2 sisters that I'm close with. I also have a niece, Leah. Leah's 16, and after my ex-wife decided to split up and divorce due to infertility problems that lasted for 5 years, I started a college fund for Leah to help her go to her chosen college. That was in 2019. Now I visit my mother's home, where my sister and Leah are living, every week to spend the weekend together. This past weekend I was asleep upstairs while my mother, my sister and Leah were in the kitchen. I came downstairs to grab a glass of water and heard my sister talking about my ex-wife expecting a baby with her new husband. This struck a nerve and I kind of froze from shock. I then heard Leah react to the news repeatedly saying, "I told you so, I told you so." Then explained she's always thought that I was the one with a problem for not being able to have a baby with my ex, but that I was too afraid to admit due to fragile masculinity. I could not believe what she said, but what made it worse is her following statement about how my ex was smart to get a divorce before it was too late. I went upstairs and into the room and shut the door and stayed there for hours. Mom and sister saw me about to leave and insisted to know what the problem was. I didn't want to argue, but I told them that I heard what Leah said about me. Leah stopped eating and got quiet. My sister tried to play dumb, but I told her I heard their entire conversation about my ex-wife and her pregnancy news. My sister tried to backpedal, saying Leah is just a kid who doesn't know much about this stuff and was just spouting nonsense. I told them I don't want to talk about it and they refused to let me leave, but I left eventually. I later sent my sister a text telling her about how hurt and devastated I was because of what Leah said, and told her I will no longer be responsible for funding her education. My sister kept trying to call, then texted saying Leah didn't mean what she said and offered to make her apologize, but I didn't feel comfortable being in the same room with someone who blamed me for something that was out of my control and something that literally turned my life upside down. My mother tried to get me to come over so we could talk, saying Leah doesn't deserve me turning my back on her like that. I haven't seen my sister nor Leah after what happened, but they are still trying to contact me, which means there's still a room for a discussion, and so I've decided to go see them tomorrow. Sit down together and have a long conversation. But this, I admit that I was mad when I told my sister about the college fund cancellation. I love Leah so much and see her as my own daughter. Unfortunately, her dad, my brother-in-law, is deceased, and so I understand losing a parent at a young age and relate to the kind of hurt she carries inside. Lost my father in an accident when I was 11, and I think that sitting down and talking things out is the best option before I make any decision. Also, one more thing to clarify, both my ex-wife and I were having these fertility issues. Both sides, but since my ex-wife got pregnant soon after her new marriage, then my family thought that I was the problem originally. It is what it is, and I'm learning to not words get in my head so easily. I'm not mad at anyone, I'm just trying to move on with my life like anybody else.